You're standing at a tailgate at 6 a.m. Breath visible, coffee going on the camp stove, a deer laid out in front of you. You've got a knife in your hand. The frost hasn't lifted yet, and the woods are still quiet. You know exactly what you're doing. Your hands know what to do. Nobody's watching. Nobody has to be. That's not just field dressing a deer. That's a statement about who you are, who raised you, and how you believe. A person ought to move through the world. Here's something worth saying clearly, because it gets lost in the noise. Men who do this, who take an animal from field to freezer themselves, aren't doing it to prove something, not to their neighbor, not to the internet, not to anybody. That's actually a key distinction. There's a version of self-reliance that's performance. That's about being seen a certain way. That version is loud, and honestly, it's a little fragile. And then there's the version most of you watching this actually live. Quiet, practiced, no audience required. Psychologists who study motivation, specifically what's called self-determination theory, talk about two distinct human needs that run very deep: competence and autonomy. The need to actually be capable, and the need to act on your own terms. What's interesting is that both of those needs get satisfied in a single afternoon of processing your own game, not symbolically, concretely, knife in hand, work in front of you, nobody else to call. There's also something researchers call provider identity, a sense of self built around the capacity to care for the people who depend on you. That's not a primitive instinct to be ashamed of. It's one of the deepest motivators a person can have, and it's worth understanding clearly. Let's start with the obvious question: why does it matter that you do it? You could drop the deer at a processor, pay someone else to do the work, walk away with the same packages in your freezer, labeled the same way. In terms of outcome meat in the house, it's almost identical, but it's not psychologically identical, not even close. When you process your own animal, you're not just completing a task. You're closing a loop that you opened. You made a decision in the field. You made a shot. You tracked that animal. You put your hands on it. And now you're following through all the way to the table. Psychologists call this agentic completion, the experience of taking something from intention all the way through to outcome, with your own hands and your own decisions guiding every step. Outsourcing the processing doesn't just transfer labor, it breaks that loop. And the satisfaction that comes from a closed loop, from "I did this start to finish," is something no dropped-off cooler can give you back. That's not a small thing. That loop is the whole point. Now here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough. After a man spends a full day processing his own game, especially if it's something he's done since he was young, or something he learned in the field himself, he walks away feeling different. Not just tired, settled. There's a specific quality to it. A kind of groundedness that isn't easy to manufacture any other way. Research on what's called mastery experiences, and this goes back to foundational work in psychology, shows that when we complete skilled, meaningful physical tasks, we update our own self-concept. We don't just do the thing. We become, slightly but measurably, the kind of person who does that thing. And the accumulation of that over years, over seasons, builds something solid in a man. A bedrock competence. Not arrogance, not ego, just the quiet knowledge that when something needs doing, you can do it. That knowledge carries. It shows up in how you carry yourself at work, how you handle difficulty, how patient you are with things you can't control. Because you've learned what you can control, and you've practiced it. And then there's the generation coming up behind you. When a father brings his kid into this process, hands them a knife, walks them through it slowly, doesn't rush them, answers the questions. He's not imposing a lifestyle. He's not trying to make a copy of himself. He's giving that kid something that cannot be downloaded, cannot be bought. He's giving them competence, real competence, the hands-on, undeniable kind that comes from actually doing something hard and finishing it. He's giving them a framework for how work feels when it matters, how it connects to something bigger than the task itself. And he's giving them a memory, a specific one, with cold air and the smell of the woods and his voice, that will still be with them 40 years from now, when they're standing at a tailgate with their own kid. That's not a skill transfer. That's love expressed in the language of doing. We live in a time that makes outsourcing almost everything genuinely easy. Groceries delivered, food already prepped, maintenance scheduled, and handled by someone else. And for a lot of things in life, that's a perfectly reasonable trade. Time is finite. But here's what's worth noticing. There's a category of human experience that outsourcing quietly erodes. Not the convenience, you keep the convenience, but the competence. The hands-on understanding of where things come from and what it takes to produce them. The confidence that comes from knowing you could if you had to. When that competence disappears over a generation or two, something else disappears with it. Not just skills, a certain kind of relationship with the physical world, with work that has weight and consequence, with the satisfaction of finishing something real. Men who still do this work, who still take an animal from the field all the way to the table under their own effort. They're not living in the past. They're not rejecting the modern world. They're just choosing not to trade away that particular category of experience. The one that keeps them tethered to something concrete, something they can put their hands on. That's an increasingly rare choice. It doesn't need to be celebrated or defended. It just is what it is. And the people who make it tend to know exactly why they make it, even if they'd never explain it in these terms. Picture this. It's late. Dinner's done. The table's cleared. The kids are somewhere down the hall. And you're putting the last package in the freezer. White butcher paper, your handwriting on the label, the date. You click the freezer door shut. And for just a second, you stand there. You know where that came from. You know every step it took to get there. The early morning, the patience, the cold, the work. All of it accounted for. All of it yours. Not in the way a purchase is yours. In the way that something earned is yours. Your grandfather did this. His father did this. Maybe you did it with your dad. Or maybe you figured it out yourself later on. And then figured out that you wanted to pass it forward. There's a kid in this house who watched you today. Helped, maybe. Asked questions you took seriously, because the questions were serious. That kid is going to grow up knowing something that most people their age won't know. Not just how to do the work, but what the work feels like. What it does to you. How it sits in your chest afterward. No app teaches that. No shortcut gets you there. You put that meat on the table. That's enough.